All right, YouTube, this Detroit's HPTV coming to you on this Monday morning, the first day of school for the young people. And we got to talk about Donald Trump going to Chicago. Donald Trump is going to Chicago because Chicago needs help. Chicago has the most traitorous, incompetent mayor in the history of mayors in Chicago. Chicago crime and the unaliving of black young people is outrageous. But yet, these black liberal Democrats don't want help. They don't want to stop the carnage. They still fear-mongering you about Trump, but Trump is giving you help. And these liberal traitors are so under control of the Dixiecrats and the hippie liberals that they're fighting it tooth and nail. They're fighting against their community's own interests. These black mayors are the most traitorous lot you've ever seen. Benedict Arnolds, Judases, because they know our communities need help. They want to get out here and juke the numbers and say that crime is down. When on the ground and in these trenches, in these cities, we know that crime is outrageous. We see the unaliving every day. And they're going to tell you that they don't need help because it's coming from Trump. How many of your young people will you watch lose their life to crime? How many immigrants will you watch run through your communities as if they're entitled and have more rights than you? And see, y'all really not going to like this. I think a lot of you so-called black conservatives, y'all scared to directly confront these liberals. Y'all to talk and listen to their threats and listen to them talk so hostile towards you, and you accept it. You accept it. You accept these plantation slaves like Roland Martin, D.L. Hughley, Steve Harvey, these puppets that's put in front of you to mislead you. You would take their side because they have a celebrity status, because of identity politics, when in all actuality, they're betraying you. How long will you conservatives allow the direct confrontation to you and the will of the people before you say enough is enough? Will it come a time where the black community has to drain their own swamp? You got Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, telling you that crime is down, telling you all these things that he wants to do in theory, and he just collapsed the entire education system in Chicago by directing funds that should have went to the constituents and the citizens of Chicago to illegal immigrants. And he gets before you and he virtue signals. He fearmongers you. He plays holier than thou when he's a criminal and a crook and he needs to be in cuffs. He needs to be prosecuted for his dereliction of duty in the city of Chicago. And then I'm going to show you this clip, and I want you to see who they have speaking for black people. Two zesty men, two effeminate men talking about they speak in behalf of black people. And you won't really address that they are a threat, that they are traitors to their communities, to their people, seditious against the government, telling you they don't want the National Guard. They don't want help. They want to keep juking the numbers, telling you crime is down when you know it's not. Mayor Duggan in Detroit had the nerve to make a post and say crime is down in Detroit. And every day in Detroit, we watch as another black person loses their life to violent crime. But this liberal mayor, soon to be independent because he's abandoned the Democratic ship because he sees it going down. But he wants to tell you crime is down. Is it like Bizarro World or something? Because they're telling you that what you're seeing isn't real. And you're listening to these hypocrites as they virtue signal. You should see how these liberals be so butthurt in the comments when you speak against the Democratic Party. They fight for them like guard dogs, like they steal the slaves of the 1800s. If you got an independent thought, they have a problem with it. And this morning, I'm looking at the conservative black men on the right. Why y'all acting scared to address these traitors, these hypocrites, when you know for a fact that these communities are suffering and hemorrhaging? But they keep race baiting and keep race hustling in your face when you know what's going on. It's like, I'm going to quote Tupac. Tupac said in the song, "They tell you it's the white man I should fear, but it's my own kind taking all the lives here." You see what goes on in O Block, 63rd, these communities in Chicago where our young people are losing their lives daily, and you don't want no help. You're fighting against the National Guard coming into a city that needs help, that's been out of control for decades. You've seen the carnage. You witnessed it. 40 and 30 people killed over a weekend. But you don't want to say nothing? You can't handle your kids. You can't control your communities. So you don't want no control. You'd rather sit and complain about how bad the crime is, instead of actually doing something. And it's sad, it's sickening. So yeah, we need for Trump to go to Chicago, then Detroit, then Baltimore, and every other city that's out of control with these young people destroying each other's lives, destroying property, destroying the security and safety in their neighborhoods. But you reject it. I'm going to show you a clip. I'm going to show you Mayor Brandon Johnson, the biggest traitor to black people ever. And I want you to see who's with him. Two zesty men. Talking rhetoric, talking politics, virtue signaling, lying to your face. So without further ado, let's get off into this clip. This is for fair use under the 1976 Copyright Act for education and commentary. This is sickening. Listen to this.
There's new reporting this morning on what those plans look like. The Washington Post reports that the Pentagon has been planning a military deployment to Chicago for weeks in a model that could later be used in other major cities, according to officials familiar with the plans. It adds that the planning, which has not been previously disclosed, involves several options, including mobilizing at least a few thousand members of the National Guard as soon as September. The Post also reports that the use of thousands of active duty troops in Chicago also has been discussed, but is considered less likely at this time, according to two officials. Overnight, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said in a statement, "There is no emergency that warrants the President of the United States federalizing the Illinois National Guard, deploying the National Guard from other states, or sending."
And he's saying that because as long as only black people taking other black people's lives, that's not a problem.
Active duty military within our borders. Donald Trump is attempting to manufacture a crisis, politicize Americans who serve in uniform, and continue abusing his power to distract from the pain he is causing working families. On Friday, President Trump indicated that Chicago would be his next target, along with another Democratic-leaning city with a black mayor.
The people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come. They're wearing red hats, just like this one. But they're wearing red hats. African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, "Please, President Trump, come to Chicago." And so I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
And joining us now is the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. Mayor Johnson, thank you for coming back to the weekend.
Now I want you to watch Mayor Johnson lie when he is sitting with these two LGBTQ men, or whatever they identify as they talk about these juke numbers to disinform you and mislead you to think that these liberal cities where crime is out of control are under attack because of racism versus the crime. Listen to them.
Get your reaction to the Washington Post reporting and what we just heard in that clip from President Trump. I'm going to play something else President Trump said on Friday with regard to your city.
Viagra and Cialis, they increase blood flow down there. That's why you can physically perform, but they...
Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent, and we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this, and it won't even be tough.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Your reaction to what you just heard.
Yeah. Well, listen, the President of the United States of America has repeated this, petulant presentation since he has assumed office. And, if the reporting is actually true, what he is proposing at this point would be the most flagrant violation of our Constitution in the 21st century. The city of Chicago does not need a military occupation. That's not what we need. In fact, we've been very clear about what we need. We need to invest in people to ensure that we can build safe and affordable communities. That's what I've done as mayor since assuming office. It's unfortunate that this...
He's lying. He has the lowest approval rate in history. And the people of Chicago, especially Danny C. and Chicago Flips Red, have been on his head for the last 2 years. Chicago is the unalive capital of the United States. More people lose their lives in Chicago than anywhere else other than Detroit and Memphis, Tennessee. Facts.
President is working overtime to divide in his attempt to conquer working families and to conquer cities across America. But this is clearly a violation of the Constitution, and we're going to...
How does the President of the United States has to conquer any city in the United States when he's the commander-in-chief of the country, of the military? They tell you these things and you eat it up because they really want you to be a fifth column for communism, socialism, Islamicism, and all these things that they want to use to change the cultural norms in this country.
Remain firm and vigilant in our commitment to ensure that our democracy is protected and our humanity is secured.
Mr. Mayor, it sounded like you said the White House had not been in touch with you at all about this, and I just want to make sure that I heard that right.
That is correct. There has been no formal communications from the Trump administration to my administration. There's been no formal communications from the White House to our governor. At this point, again, this is all, I believe, an attempt to frighten and to raise anxiety across America. Here's what we're doing in Chicago. The fact of the matter is violent crime is actually down in Chicago. We've reduced homicides by almost 32%. Shootings and shooting victims, we reduced that by nearly...
He said he reduced homicide by 32%. Homicide should be reduced to 0. Because since the National Guard has been in D.C., no one has lost their lives to violent crime. Think about that. If no one is losing their life and the city has become safe, what does that 32% really look like to you when people are still daily losing their lives? Have you ever thought that maybe the homicides are down because they are running out of people to shoot?
40%. Robberies are down 35%. There is certainly more work to be done, but we are moving towards building the safest, most affordable big city in America. And what the Trump administration is attempting to do is to roll back the hands of time and take us to a time period in which we know from the Civil Rights era where Dr. King described this type of act as one of the 3 evils. the militarization of our society.
They love to bring up Dr. Martin Luther King as if they don't know that the Democratic government was blackmailing Dr. King and extorting Dr. King so that they could usurp and co-opt the civil rights movement so that they would stay in power. They used King to solidify a voting bloc that are still loyal right now to the Democratic Party, even though the Democratic Party hates black people.
Society is not who we are as a country. And I'm going to remain firm and vigilant to make sure that we're actually doing the work that works. And what we have seen in Chicago, when we invest in people, we drive violence down. Whether it's investing in youth employment, investing in affordable homes, and quite frankly, investing in our Detectives Bureau, where we have revamped our entire Detectives Division.
He lied to your face. He invested in none of that. He invested in illegal immigrants. That's where the money went that collapsed their educational system in Chicago.
Be able to solve violent crime. And we have a clearance rate of almost 77, 76%. And so we're solving crime, we're reducing crime, we're investing in people, and that's what's working for the people of Chicago.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things that we've talked about on this show a lot, and that me and Jonathan talk off air about a lot, is that this doesn't appear to be actually about crime. Because the cities that the president has talked about, these major cities, all of that crime has gone down. In Chicago, we have down 13.3% in year-to-date totals, 7.1% down in Washington, D.C., 4.9% in New York compared with last year. It's declining over and over and over again. You see Oakland, Los Angeles, and Baltimore, cities that the president has also talked about. I guess when you're talking about you're going to, you and the governor are going to protect the folks there, make sure that this doesn't happen. What are you guys planning to do? Maybe you don't want to tell us your plan, but folks, I think, watching want to know that there actually is something that folks can do because, you said it's unconstitutional, but we've seen this president.
Despicable. This guy is sitting there asking these softball questions is zesty as all outdoors. These are your representatives who claim to work in behalf of black people. Have them being in office helped you? The Democratic Party has been the #1 destroyer of our communities and nuclear families. And they still will virtue signal and get in front of your face and fearmonger you as if you're blind or you're so emotional that you refuse to accept the reality of what our communities have become.
Ignore many things that folks have said that weren't constitutional, him going ahead and plowing ahead and doing them anyway.
Let's say you have 50K in cash and you use that to buy Bitcoin on Coinbase. Bitcoin's at 100K.
Yeah, well, again, look, the 10th Amendment is actually quite clear where states reserve rights. And that's something that's an important thing to note. And we will, take up legal action if necessary. Whether it's my Department of Law or working with the governor, we're also in communications with our Cook County Board President. We're all aligned in the city of Chicago. In fact, this is a time for all of us to come together in this moment. And, there are some political differences certainly that we do have in Chicago. But I think in this regard, we're all very clear that the Trump administration is clearly in violation of the Constitution. And it's pretty straightforward for us. You either support the Constitution or you do not. Those are the only two positions that you can take. And again, whether it's legal actions as well as the community as a whole coming together to push back in a very dramatic way against this administration. Because, look, as I said before, we're doing the work here in Chicago, and you mentioned other cities around America, and whether it's, what Brandon Scott is doing, Randall Woodfin is doing in Birmingham, Justin Bibb in Cleveland, my other counterpart, Mayor Johnson in Milwaukee, Karen Bass, Barbara Lee. I mean, these are all strong leaders across this country that have made...
Every person he named is a Democratic shield and a sellout who got rich off the suffering and pain of the black community.
Critical investments in affordable housing, youth employment, mental and behavioral health care services. We are investing in people, and quite frankly, the most vulnerable people. What this president is doing, he's declared a war on poor people. I remember when we had presidents that declared war on poverty. That's the opposite from this administration. Picking on homeless people, picking on the most vulnerable. That is not what the people of Chicago are going to stand for. And so we'll use all means necessary to us to ensure that we protect the Constitution and we protect this beloved city.
The people of Chicago hate this mayor. They do. Check out Danny C. of Chicago Flips Red on YouTube and see what the real Chicagoans say about this mayor.
Mayor Johnson, actually, I have two questions. I'm struggling with which one to ask you, but I'll start with the more substantive one. Eugene asked you if you had any communication with the White House about the plans that were reported in the Washington Post. I'm wondering, what communications have you had with Governor Pritzker about what is to come, about federal intervention, especially since President Trump has been talking about sending in the military in some form to Chicago since his first run in the office between 2017 and 2021?
Yes, well, the governor and I, we just spoke a couple of days ago. Our teams are in constant communications, as well as with our board president. There is an incredible strong alignment here. And, to the point that I made earlier, the president does not have the constitutional or legal authority to federalize the National Guard here in Illinois. It would be, again, a clear, flagrant violation of the Constitution and federal laws. What we've said here repeatedly, and this is the conversation that the governor and I have on a regular basis, if the president was actually, sincere about reducing violence in Chicago or anywhere else in this country, he would not have taken $800 million away from violence prevention dollars. We've seen in his nasty bill where we've seen the largest concentration of wealth placed into the hands of the ultra-rich. It reminds me of, Justice Brandeis, who said, listen, you can either have wealth concentrated into the hands of the few, or you can have a democracy, but you cannot have both. And this president has attacked everything that's sensible about our society. He's taken food away from families. He's taken medicine away from families. He's defunded our education system. That's the opposite, the antithesis to what we're doing here in Chicago, investing in affordable homes, investing in small businesses, making sure that the most vulnerable people have access to high quality education as well as health care, including mental and behavioral health care. So the governor and I have been very clear that not only is he in violation of the Constitution, we have to remain committed to ensuring that we're investing in working families. Look, the National Guard is not going to put food on the table. The National Guard is not going to, reduce unemployment. The National Guard is not going to give people access to health care. This president, of course, has demonstrated that he is inimical to the interests of working people. But here in Chicago, a pro-worker city, a city that said, yes, we can, a city that said, keep hope alive, right? This is the city where resistance came alive. Dr. King said, if we can do it right in Chicago, we can do it anywhere in the world. And that's what we're doing, building safe and affordable communities across Chicago.
They always like to bring up Dr. King, but in every major city where there's a Martin Luther King Boulevard or Martin Luther King Drive are the most dangerous communities in the country. They use this man's name to hide every dirty politic that the Democrats implement in our communities.
Chicago, if the president was sincere about those type of investments, he would not be prancing around the country using unconstitutional means to ultimately extend his authoritarianism rule.
Mr. Mayor, in the time that we have left, I just want to get your reaction to another thing in the Washington Post story, and I'm reading directly here. It says, the use of thousands of active duty troops in Chicago also has been discussed, but is considered less likely at this time. We saw him do that with active duty Marines on the streets of Los Angeles. What would the reaction be in Chicago if the President of the United States does indeed put active duty military on the streets of Chicago?
Well, again, the city of Chicago does not need a military occupied state. That's not who we are. And I commend the work of Mayor Bass, my colleague, and all the folks in Los Angeles who stood up and fought, against this, authoritarianism. Here's the bottom line: they don't have police power. There's nothing they can do. These are federal troops. They do not go through the training that our police officers go through, so they cannot even enact police authority.
But Mayor Johnson, they don't have it now.
The president has, that's a good point, but the president has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to arrest 9 people in D.C. That clearly he's demonstrated that he doesn't have a level of consciousness to understand what it takes to run cities, not to mention an entire country. And so, look, we're going to remain firm. We'll take legal action. But the people in this city are accustomed to rising up against tyranny. And if that's necessary, I believe that the people of Chicago will stand firm alongside of me as I work every single day to protect the people of this city.
He know that's a lie. The people of Chicago hate this man. They despise him. These liberals will do anything to stay in power and protect illegal immigrants.
But Mayor Johnson, really quickly, and I was trying to interject there quickly, but they don't have that power now, right? Like what we have seen is that this president and the administration are willing to stretch the bounds of everything. And so currently they don't have, policing power, but that may not be true for the foreseeable future. Anything could happen on the streets of Chicago if the president actually indeed puts, as he put it, regular military there.
Well, that's why we're all in lockstep here in the state of Illinois. As I continue to work with the governor, the Cook County Board President, these are strong partners and elected officials, as well as our faith community, our business leaders. Look, the city of Chicago, one of the most diverse economies in the world, right? Again, a city that has been, founded and established on the values of working people. We're not going to surrender our humanity to this tyrant. I can tell you this: the city of Chicago has a long history of standing up against tyranny, resisting those who wish to undermine the interests of working people. We're not going to back down. We're not going to cower. We're not going to bend. We're not going to break. We are Chicago. We are the soul of America, and we will maintain that posture from now until.
Mayor Johnson of Chicago, thank you so much for joining the weekend once again.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you heard it. Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago, the biggest traitor to the black community that I've ever seen, is still fear-mongering you. And as I said in the beginning of this video, you black conservatives, are y'all actually scared of the virtue signaling and the fear-mongering coming from these democratic slaves? Let me know in the comments. And I know it's going to be a lot of weird liberals in the comments virtue signaling, but we all know they wanted to transgender our children. They wanted to terminate pregnancy all the way to the 8th month. They wanted the border open. They're against God, family, and country. And they should be opposed. They should be opposed. Well, this is Detroit's HPTV coming out of Detroit. Support the channel. Subscribe. And as always, salute to all patriots. Y'all better keep your head on the swivel. Peace.